Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Matt, and welcome to week 16 of the Language Learning Mastermind group. And if you're new here, this is basically a weekly series of videos where I talk about language learning, I talk about my own progress, and hopefully kind of all the sections combined together will help you to stay motivated, help you to have more fun in your language learning, and make more progress in the end of the day. And I've left the sections of the video in the description, so if you want to skip around, feel free to do that. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So I wanted to start off this week and talk about a weekly challenge, and I really liked this idea from last week, and so I want to kind of expand on it this week. And so in the comments section below, last week I asked people how their language learning progress has been going, but I asked them to write it in the language that they're learning. And if you want to do that again this week, I highly encourage you to do so. Definitely let me know how your language learning is going, but try to do it in your target language that you're learning. But in addition to that, I also wanted to kind of mix it up a little bit. And so if you want to talk about your own language learning progress, of course, that's great. But tell me something about you. Tell me something that you have an interest in, a hobby, and then write that in your target language. And if you don't want to write a comment, you're not comfortable doing that, that's totally fine. I would still encourage you to kind of open up a text file or open up a journal or a piece of paper and try to write in your target language and tell me or write to yourself how your language learning progress is going, but also just something that you're really interested in, right? Try to share that passion and hobby or interest either in the comment section below or kind of on a piece of paper in a text file or something like that. And so this week I will kind of try to do the same in the comment section below. And so remember, basically main point here is to share how your language learning is going, but in the language that you're learning, and something that you're really interested in and a hobby of yours, and try to just kind of share that passion or that joy or excitement you have for that hobby. And if you're at a very elementary level, it's okay. Just try to write a sentence, right? Or try to write a paragraph. And if you have a higher skill level or you're more motivated to write more, by all means, write more, right? And try to not worry too much about the grammar. Try not to worry about mistakes, right? We're just trying to kind of work on that output and the act of writing itself, because I think that a lot of people, they want to write in comment sections of YouTube videos of the language that they're learning, right? Maybe they're learning German and they want to kind of try to write a German comment or something like that. So I would encourage you to kind of challenge yourself and try to write a comment, but in your target language, right? And kind of just two suggestions, like I said, or tell me how your language learning has been going, or a hobby or interest, tell me about that hobby or interest that you have, but in the language that you're learning. So in addition to this challenge, I also wanted to add another challenge, but it is for the entire week, and I'll be doing this myself. And I would encourage you to challenge yourself and try to focus on one activity and really put a ton of time and energy into that activity. So I think that a kind of a good, rough kind of number to throw out there is try to do maybe this activity 1 hour every single day. So 7 hours for the entire week. So for me, for example, I'm going to do 7 hours of reading in Russian this week. And I'm really excited because it's going to be a dramatic ramp up of reading for my Russian studies. And I think that that can be really huge for my vocabulary, for grammar, and just reading overall. And so I'm going to challenge myself and try to do 7 hours of reading in Russian. And I would encourage you to try to do 7 hours of some sort of activity. And just to kind of give you some examples, there's 7 hours of reading. You could do 7 hours of listening, right? Try to really ramp up your listening comprehension. It could also be 7 hours of conversations, right? 7 hours of trying to work on your speaking. And if you don't have a conversation partner or the ability to talk to others, try to just talk to yourself, right? Talk about things that you're interested in. Talk about how your day went, right? Try to do this kind of solo speaking activity if you want to kind of go down the speaking road. Maybe it could be 7 hours of vocabulary acquisition with like flashcards, or 7 hours of grammar review. The kind of idea is to focus in on one area. And it doesn't have to be 7 hours. If you want to do 20 hours or 40 hours, that's fine. You want to do less, you don't have the time for an hour every day, totally fine too. Maybe it could be 30 minutes. Whatever it is, right? Modify it to what makes sense for your own language learning, where you are, what you want to focus in on. But I think that maybe a good rough benchmark to go on is just an hour a day of a certain activity. So for me, I'm going to really challenge myself and try to do an hour of Russian reading every single day. And so that's 7 hours for the entire week, just to see what happens. And I'm going to try to also do my other activities within language learning for Russian. So listening, grammar, things like that. But I'm going to really challenge myself to really get in a lot of reading because I think it can really add up for me, at least where I am in my own Russian. So I would encourage you to try that out. If you don't want to do it this week, maybe it's a really busy week or you're focusing in on other aspects, that's fine. Maybe try it out next week or later down the road. It's just something that I'm going to do for this coming week, and I'll share some of my progress. But if you want to join me and try to do a similar activity, let me know in the comments section below and tell me what you want to focus in on this week. And like I said, you can modify it and change it to what makes sense, whether that's increasing that hour total, focusing in on a different area, maybe just deciding to do it in another week, right? It doesn't really matter, but the main kind of idea is to focus in on one activity. And the thing about it is that we can see the impact this activity might have, right? So hopefully with next week, I'll be able to share kind of some of my progress and some of the things that I've learned with this kind of focus in on reading for me. And so, when you do these activities, you're able to find out a lot of new things about where you are at the language, things that might help or not help, right? You might realize, for example, or I might realize, wow, this reading has been really helpful for me. Let me ramp that up for the next week. And then my progress could increase dramatically. Or maybe I find out this is not the kind of best thing to focus in on right now. Maybe I need to focus in on speaking or listening, right? It's going to depend on your skill level. But I think that if you do these kind of focused activities, even if it's just for a week, I think you'll learn a lot about yourself. You'll learn a lot about where you are, the language, what you need to work on, and even get some just significant gains in your overall language learning. So another challenge just to add on for the week, I'll be focusing on this reading aspect, and I'll be sharing that, of course, next week. So I would encourage you, once again, to try out a challenge and just modify it to what works best for you. So now I wanted to transition and talk about my Russian progress, and it went really well this week. It was super busy. I actually kind of struggled a little bit to get to my 7 hours for the week. I really had to play catch up towards the second half of the week. I just couldn't really get some of the Russian in that I would have liked towards the middle part of the week, but overall, I got my time in, and it was a very solid week. I focused in on vocabulary acquisition, did some listening, a little bit of grammar, and some reading overall. So kind of really hit all of the areas, but I felt like it was very much kind of just one of those another week passes, right? No significant milestones, right? I think that progress was good. I put in the time and effort into my Russian progress, but I didn't see anything dramatic, right? I didn't see like this just new feeling of being way better at the language, right? And this is kind of something that I think is important to express sometimes, is that sometimes, we do a session of language learning for a day, or we do it for a week or a month or something, and we just don't feel that much better, right? We put in that time, we put in that energy into the language learning process, whether it's through speaking, reading, or whatever it is, and you just don't feel any different. But there's a lot of things that are happening underneath the hood, right? You are getting better at the words that you have learned, right? You're becoming more comfortable with them. You're getting more comfortable with grammar. You're getting better at expressing yourself with speaking or writing or something like that. And you have to realize that sometimes there's just going to be these moments where you feel like you're not making progress, or the effort you put in for that day or week really didn't contribute to your overall success in language learning, right? You don't feel much better. But there are times where, you'll have this spike and you will feel better at the language, right? But it's this gradual process with learning a language, right? It takes a long time to get to a very high skill level in a language. And so sometimes you just got to have to deal with that feeling and really trust your process. And like I've said many times, this is where I think goals and tracking really help you, because it kind of helps to reassure you that you indeed are making progress, you're hitting those targets, you're doing the things that you need to do to continue to be successful in your overall learning. And so I kind of had that feeling this week, but I'm not really too affected by it, right? It's just something that I noticed, is that this was just another week, good progress, a lot of time and energy into the language learning process, but no kind of dramatic feelings of massive progress or anything like that. So kind of hitting all of the individual areas. So vocabulary acquisition, I've continued to focus in on learning new words and learning the words that I have already learned a little bit better. And that's progressing quite nicely. I'm noticing way more words when I read in Russian. Same with listening to just audio content. I'll notice a lot more words here and there. And so overall, it's going quite nicely. I think I'm getting way more comfortable with the Russian language overall. So, at first, kind of one of those big obstacles, and it's still an obstacle, is just, dealing with that different alphabet with Russian. And when you read stuff or you're trying to learn a new word, you're a little bit slow, right? A little bit slow at um, saying the word out loud or getting it correctly. At least I am a little slow, but it's gotten better, right? I've become more comfortable with learning new words, with just the alphabet and that word acquisition process, and so that's progressing quite nicely. But it's just a continuous process with learning words and getting more comfortable with the language. But overall, I'm very happy with that. Listening continues to build as well. Nothing really too new on that front as well. It's just continuing to do some listening comprehension here and there, and I am noticing some grammar and some words while I listen in Russian. And I think that for me, I'm still at a very elementary level with Russian, and so as I get better at the language, as I learn more words, I'm going to be putting more time into listening. I just think that sometimes I only get so much out of the listening comprehension process with Russian, right? And so I know that that's going to ramp up later down the road, but I am, very happy with the listening comprehension as well. And then now for grammar, that's also progressing quite nicely. There's only so much time that I'm putting into grammar, but I'm very comfortable with just the progress overall. I'm getting more comfortable with the cases, the conjugations, and just memorizing some kind of key items here and there. So that's going quite nicely. And then reading is also going quite well. As I kind of mentioned earlier on in the video, I'm going to do this reading challenge for next week, 7 hours of reading. For the entire week and to really just see what the result is going to be, whether that's from a vocabulary acquisition aspect of things or from grammar or all those things. So I'm really excited about that. I'm going to really be ramping that up into the new week, but I'm very happy with reading progress. It's continuing to build. I'm getting more comfortable with reading and learning words and things like that. So overall, Russian's going quite nicely. Nicely, like I said, it was a very busy week. I had to kind of play catch up a little bit to kind of get to my 7 hour mark for the week, but it's going quite nicely. And like I said, there are those weeks where sometimes you just kind of have to put in the time and put in the energy and try to put in, like a lot of quality time into the language learning process and really trust that process because there's going to be moments where you feel like you're still a beginner, you're still an intermediate, or you're not progressing, you're not learning new words, you're staying the same with your speaking. You have to just kind of trust that process and keep doing the things that you need to do, right? Keep doing the activities that are going to be very high impact and that are going to pay off over the long term. And of course, hopefully, you're trying to enjoy the language learning process as well, right? Doing those activities that you find enjoyable, whether it's watching Netflix shows, playing video games in a foreign language, or whatever it is, right? Try to have fun as well, because especially in those moments where you don't feel like you're making progress, or it's just kind of a grind. You have to kind of put in that time and energy. When you're having fun and you're doing those fun activities, I think it really helps a lot, especially in those periods of time where you don't feel like you're making progress. So overall, Russian went really well this week. Just another solid week of progress, and we'll continue to see how that builds moving forward. And now I wanted to transition into our weekly topic and talk about energy, right? Energy that you put into language learning or really any activity out there. And I think that this is a very important concept, especially when you're learning anything, especially language learning, is that you really want to be very mindful, in my opinion at least, of the energy that you put into something, right? The passion, the kind of the momentum, the overall force that you put into the language learning process itself. And this really, like I said, applies to things beyond language learning, right? But obviously, we're talking about language learning here, and so that's kind of the area we're going to focus in on. And of course, you can think of this energy in many different ways. Maybe it's being really concentrated as you learn the language, really focused, really motivated, really just kind of in tune with learning the language. But I think sometimes it's just this internal battle that's going on, this internal force and feeling that you need to try to bring out of yourself to put into those activities that you're doing, and in this case, language learning. So I think that a good example of this is when you're talking to other people, right? Just in daily life, where your vocal tonality has so much impact about the feeling of how your points get across when you're talking to others, right? So for example, you could just be having a conversation with someone and just be like, and they could ask you, "How's your day going?" And you could say, "My day is going okay." Or you could be saying that same phrase, but just go, hey, my day is going really well, right? There's this different energy, there's this different impact when you kind of put your full energy and force into that activity, right? And in that case, it's obviously conversations, but I think that you can apply the same kind of force and the same momentum within your language learning, right? When you sit down to go do vocabulary, don't just kind of try to just do the vocabulary and go through the motions, right? Or just try to churn it out, right? Before you go into the activity, I think it's really important or helpful if you kind of just try to bring that energy out and bring your best foot forward into your language learning, right? Try to bring positivity, excitement into that language learning process that you're doing. I think it really can add up quite a bit in the end of the day. Whether it's you're putting that energy into learning new words, or practicing listening, or speaking, right? I think that that energy, that mindset going into the activity can really be helpful in the end of the day and can help you to have more progress, right? If you're feeling good, if you're feeling motivated and positive, I think it's doing things underneath the hood to help you to learn better, to have more fun in your language learning. And I think that over the long term, right, when we have those 5% efficiency improvements, 10% efficiency improvements, whatever it is, it really adds up quite a bit. And I think it'll make your language learning a lot more enjoyable, especially if you're at that beginner stage where it's a grind at times, right? You feel like you're not making progress. You have a limited ability to interact with very compelling content because you don't have a strong foundation in vocabulary or a very light foundation in grammar. So I think that energy and that power that you have within your language learning is very important, right? To put that best foot forward overall when you're learning. And I think that when you're doing these activities, right, try to be fully engaged with whatever activity you're doing, right? So, if you're going to commit to 15 minutes or 30 minutes, really just kind of tell yourself, hey, I am going to do 15 minutes of language learning. I'm really tired right now, but I'm going to put my best foot forward and I'm going to be focused in on it. And then when I'm done, I'm done. Right. And I think that it's difficult at times to fully kind of try to compartmentalize and be fully engaged with language learning and then fully relax, right? Sometimes, it's hard to relax at times, right? I've struggled with this at times where, I'm kind of half in a work mindset and half in a fun mindset. And that means that you're not relaxing at your best and you're not working at your best at times. So I think it's important to try at least to, when you're done language learning, right? When you're done learning, right, and you're kind of going to go have fun or relax or whatever it is, right? Try to leave the language learning to the side, right? Because there's a kind of moments, at least in my own experience, where you might think, I didn't do language learning as much as I thought I was going to. Maybe I need to go do 15 minutes again or another 30 minutes, or that study session wasn't really good. Let me go back and do that, right? Try to separate that, right? Do that 30 minutes of very quality time and then just be done, right? Then go fully immerse yourself in relaxing so you can recharge and get the most out of your time with whatever activity it is, right? And it applies to really any concept out there, whether it's being fully engaged with kind of those moments where you're going to socialize, fully engaged in those moments where you're going to relax and recharge or do work. I think that, if you're going to put in the time to anything, even if it's something that's relaxing, right? Try to be engaged. Try to, make the most out of that time and really enjoy yourself, right? Really relax or really get the most out of the language learning. And so now I wanted to transition into our weekly reflection and ask you, how did your week go in language learning? What were three things that went really well and three things that did not go so well? And hopefully it doesn't appear super repetitive that I keep asking these questions, right? I try to kind of break break it down and put new spins on this kind of section of the videos. But I think that it's really important to reflect in language learning, right? It's important to just ask yourself, how is your language learning going, right? Is it going well? Is it not going so well? Do you need to mix it up, make your language learning more fun, whatever it is, right? And I think it's been very helpful for me because I think that at times it's very easy to go on autopilot mode with certain activities out there where you're just not really thinking about what you're doing. You're just kind of hoping for the best, hoping for more progress and more results, and it's not happening, right? Or it's happening at a very slow rate because you're just not thinking about it, right? You could be making things way more efficient, way more powerful and impactful, but you're just kind of stuck on autopilot mode, or you're just kind of not seeing the opportunities. And I've fallen into this trap many times where you are just kind of going through the motions of things, and maybe you're not even going through the motions of things. You just kind of assume this is the best that it's going to be, and or you just don't think about all this stuff in general. And what I found is that when I started to reflect about things and try to make my language learning more efficient, or try to make it to have more fun, or just do new things, right? Try to make it novel. It really helped me a lot to have more fun and to make more progress. So I really do think that just taking inventory about your own progress and things like that can really be helpful. So, the way that I approach it is try to, of course, look at the things that you're doing great, right? What are the positive things that are going on, right? So, for example, for me, I'm really, happy with the consistency throughout the entire year, right? Really hitting those 7 hours, I think pretty much every single week. So that's really, really great, right? And you want to reinforce kind of positivity in your language learning, right? Look at the things that you're doing really well, and compliment yourself, right? Pat yourself on the back. And of course, we also want to look at the things that we're not doing so great, and really try to bring them to light. And I know that that can be painful, maybe it's stressful, but I think it helps a lot in the long term, and you'll thank yourself later, right? Where in a lot of cases, I think that sometimes we know when we could be better, right? We know that we have been slacking on a certain activity, right? Where we go, I've been telling myself I'm going to try to get better at grammar, but I haven't opened that grammar book. And, I think that when you do an activity like reflecting, you can bring those kind of weaknesses that you have to light, right? Or, hey, I've been really lazy with doing language learning on the weekends or learning new words, right? You kind of know it deep down, but you just don't think about it and you just keep going, right? But I think that taking that time to think about those things that you aren't doing so well can be helpful for you in the long term, right? Because all the reflection is there to do is to try to help you, right? Try to make you a better learner, try to help you to learn quicker, right? To have more fun. And yeah, the reflection itself might kind of make you realize that you've been doing some things really inefficiently, or you still have a long way to go. But if you stick with it and try to improve yourself, I think that over the long term it'll help you a lot more than just kind of sticking with a plan that's maybe not so efficient, or you're eventually going to get burned out with. So like I've said in kind of the previous videos or the previous sections, in the past, right? Try to think of those three things that you're doing really well and three things that you're not doing so well. And then also try to come up with a plan to improve that situation, right? So let's say that you are not really learning new words. You've really not had the motivation to do that. Well, kind of try to set up a goal of saying, okay, I'm going to learn 5 new words every single day, no matter what, for 4 weeks or whatever it is, right? Try to come up with a plan and a way to come to a solution to that problem that you're facing or thing you're struggling with, right? Maybe your listening comprehension is not as good as you would like. Try to put in some more time and energy into practicing listening so that it can be more enjoyable later down the road. So I think that not only do you want to try to identify the things that you're doing well and not so great, but try to come up with plans to make them better, right? Or fix the problems that you may have. And think of the main core areas within language learning. So vocabulary, grammar, listening, speaking, things like that. If you're struggling to find out, what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, try to hit those kind of main areas. And I think that if you do just reflect ever so often, every week, every month, just, there doesn't have to be a set time, right? Just ever so often, I think it can be helpful to help make your language learning more fun, more efficient overall. And that's what I have for the week. So let me know what you think. If you're open to it, leave a comment below. And of course, like I said in the challenge section of this video, let me know how your language learning is going, but in the target language that you're learning. And as well, let me know about a hobby or interest that you really like. Maybe it's sports, music, video games, reading, something like that. But try to write it in the language that you're learning, right? Try to kind of challenge yourself to use different vocabulary from last week, right, where we really focused in on how your language learning is going. Well, tell me about a hobby or interest or something like that, but in the language that you're learning. And of course, if you're not open to writing a comment, that's totally fine. Try to write it out on your own in a journal, in a text file, or something like that, just so that you can work on your own language learning and that output activity. And so that's what I had. So let me know what you think once again, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.